Hello everyone. I can't believe we're already on day 4 of Baby Communication Week. It has been so brilliant already, and thank you so much to everyone who has been supporting the week and celebrating the week. We've been really blown away by everything that everyone's been doing, so thank you so much. And I thought I would just give a little introduction to the event today before I bring Faith to join us on the video. So today we are kind of focusing in on parents, and obviously we've been looking this week at just how babies are communicating from birth, and also yesterday we were looking at how professionals can promote baby communication and share baby's language with parents, and how powerful that is. So today we are going to hear from a parent, and Faith has a really wonderful story to share with us. So I will bring her in to join us, and just also to introduce myself again. So I'm Sarah, and I'm the communications coordinator at the Brazelton Centre. So let me just let Faith join us.
Felicia should be coming in. There we go.
Hello.
Hello, Faith. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
And can you see me and hear me all right?
I can actually. Can you do the same for me?
Yes, we're all good. Good. Oh, yes. So, Faith, I was just saying how for our Baby Communication Week, today we are kind of focusing in on parents and hearing from them about how sort of being shown and sharing their baby's communication, especially kind of from birth really, and in those first few months, has been really helpful for them. And I know you've got a really amazing story kind of around that. But yeah, I would love to kind of start, if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about yourself, so we can get to know you.
Of course. Well, my name's Faith Bleasdale. I'm a single mother, and for a living I write books when I have the time. And my son, Xavier, he's now 12. He has a diagnosis of Down syndrome, but he's also autistic, so he has a dual diagnosis. So it's fun in our household, you can imagine.
Oh, amazing. And you're based southwest, aren't you?
Beautiful North Devon.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, we often feel envious because we're based up here in Cambridge, and it can get so hot. So we hear about how it's a bit more refreshing down there, and beautiful. So
yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, lovely. So yeah, you're gonna share your kind of story with us today. And I wondered if we could kind of start back when you kind of became pregnant, and maybe you could tell us about your pregnancy and how that was for you.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I had a pretty good pregnancy. Obviously, it was 12 years ago, so my memory might be a bit rose-colored glasses. But no, I had a pretty easy pregnancy, usual morning sickness. We sailed through all the scans and the tests. I had a blood test to see what risk category I was in, but I was low risk. So found out at 20 weeks I was having a boy, and then it was just full steam ahead. Really, actually, I quite enjoyed my pregnancy because I ate a lot.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great thing about pregnancy, isn't it? You they say you can have kind of like 2 portions of dessert or whatever.
Very literally, to be honest.
Yeah, why not?
And baby weight, 12 years on.
Oh, well. Yeah, no, that's so interesting to hear, though, that, you know, I think it's probably quite an unusual thing for the sort of the Down syndrome not to be picked up
Yeah,
during the pregnancy.
yeah, it wasn't picked up at all. I mean, I didn't have an amnio, but everything else, everything else was fine. So it just didn't even occur to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so from there, you had Xavier, and kind of those early days. How was that? And then how did you kind of how did the kind of diagnosis come about?
Well, I had a very easy birth apparently, because it was 9 hours. I was in the water, and just when I said I'd had enough, they sort of looked at me anxiously and said, "Well, can you push now?" Because I was in a hospital for an hour because they wouldn't let me go in. So anyway, so that was all easy, and I had this beautiful baby boy, and yeah, he was amazing. And I mean, I was tired, and I really needed my roots doing, so I wouldn't take too many photos. But that was all great. The early days, it was fine. He breastfed quite easily. There were no problems apart from he was a bit cold from being in the water. So sort of a couple of months later, that the health visitors thought he had jaundice and take him to the GP to get it checked out. So the GP then referred us to the hospital, and there's me thinking, oh, it's a bit of jaundice, it's fine. And there, the consultant turned around and said to me, "Have you considered that he might have Down syndrome?" And I was just like completely and utterly blown away, because it hadn't occurred to me, or anyone actually, the first 2 months of his life. So suddenly to have that bomb dropped on me was horrific. And then it was just before Christmas actually, so everything was a blur. There were tests obviously, and you know, just trying to keep it together and thinking, and everyone was debating, you know, whether it was, my GP said no way, and you know, there was a lot of like, people had opinions. Even the consultant who had suggested it said that he was 50-50, and he's never 50.
Yeah.
So when I got a phone call on New Year's, this is exactly how it happened. I got a phone call on New Year's Eve saying, "The good news is your son has a gallbladder." And I was like, I don't even know what that is. So I don't know good news actually. And the bad news is he has Down syndrome.
Wow.
And that was the earth-shattering moment. Where, you know, I think I spent the whole rest of New Year's Eve in bed sobbing, basically.
Yes, such a shock. Yeah, yeah. And that was how old was Xavier at that point?
He was about 2 months old.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And if I may ask, kind of how did that affect you? I mean, you already kind of said initially there was a huge kind of shock, understandably.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually, for me, it felt like the worst thing that could ever happen. And I knew nothing about children with special needs. I knew nothing about Down syndrome, apart from what you sort of see. I suppose more the old-fashioned view was my view. I sort of lived my baby in a completely different way, because like, I had one baby for 2 months, and then they'd taken that baby away and they'd given me a different one, and I didn't reconcile that. And so I did a lot of crying, a lot of soul searching, a lot of talking to people, and you know, sort of going through the motions of parenting. But I have to admit, and it's one of the things that I suppose I have forgiven myself for it, because I think it's completely natural. But I think there was a moment when I just didn't even see my child anymore. He wasn't. That wasn't my child. So I did lose for a little bit. I mean, it was literally probably only a matter of days.
Yeah, sure.
I was shocked into sort of pulling myself together by someone who, a health professional who came round to see me, and said, "Well, have you considered putting him up for adoption?" And at that moment, that just triggered the mother in me. Like, that's my child. How would I be able to live with having had him for this long and then not knowing what he's doing every single day of his life for the next whatever? I mean, that kind of, but it was a horrible thing to say, but actually it was the best thing to say, because it kind of just really made me rear up and go, "There you, this is my And then I looked at him again, and then I was like, oh yeah, I know you.
Yeah,
Went
yeah.
back to how we were before, with, you know, obviously with a lot of different differences.
Mm, mm. And I guess when you sort of first kind of found out, and you said obviously it was, you kind of saw him as a different baby and that kind of thing, did it kind of affect the way you interacted with him?
Yeah, because I just went through the motions, you know.
Mm,
My mum sort of was my mum did a lot, and she was, you know, helping me with the feeding and doing all that, because I kind of lost it for a while. And
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, it was only a matter of days, and I still, like, you know, I still cuddled him and everything, but I think
Mm,
I just think I was in a very dark place, so
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And so we're gonna sort of talk about how you had this session with uh, your health visitor, and how she showed you Xavier's kind of abilities and communication, and all of that. So I just wanted to find out kind of how that kind of came about to be able to have that session.
well, I think it was because everyone was completely worried that I was going to go loopy. So
Mm,
the health visitors, everyone sort of stepped in to try and help, because obviously the pediatrician or the consultant that had told me wasn't exactly the best people person.
mm,
And I had to send Zay for all these awful tests that were, you know, when you're only 2 months old, it's quite hard to see them have scans and things like that where they're supposed to stay still. So it was all, so the health visitors were absolutely wonderful, and they introduced me to Inga, who said, you know, she's going to come over and see you and Xavier. And I think I remember, I don't know if you'll remember this, but I think Xavier, again, very, very young, he hated being, you know how they used to say, put them on their tummies, they need to have tummy time. And they hated
yeah,
being on his tummy, so he'd roll over
yeah,
from like a really young age. And everyone
wow,
supposed to be doing that yet. And I think he rolled over for Inga, and she was like, look, you see, he's already knowing what he likes and he doesn't like.
mm,
And
mm, mm,
we just had this like really lovely time of really looking at my child and really seeing him, and not seeing, because I've always been one of these, when I came out of my fog, my first thing I said was, I do not want this to define us. I don't want it to define him, and I don't want it to define me, because it did, you know, family, friends, everything, all of a sudden
mm,
the way they saw us as well. I mean, I know
mm,
I couldn't criticize, but I just didn't want us to be defined by this. So I think Inga was the first person who showed me I didn't actually need to be, because she just took Zay for who he was and at face value what he was doing. And bless him, he was only 2 months old, so it wasn't an awful lot. But it kind of just made me realize that I could parent him the way I was going to parent him anyway. And
yeah, yeah,
the diagnosis had changed, it didn't mean he'd changed, it didn't mean I'd changed. So really so I took that on, and that was really hard, because a lot of people thought I was crazy.
mm, mm.
To be fair.
Sorry, do you know what? It's just popped to my mind. I always do this, but I forgot to say, if anyone has any kind of questions, you're welcome to send them in. I think there's a kind of question icon that you can add your questions to on the Instagram. So if you do have any, we can do those. So can you kind of remember or describe to us what happened during that session?
I can't actually remember what. I can't remember what
That's all right. It's not. It was a while ago.
time ago. And also, I think I was like on, but I just remember having this feeling of this very calm person coming in and saying, "Look, this is your baby, and this is you, and look at how he's got really good. You know, he was really looking at us, and he looked really sort of engaged and wise, all those things." And you know, and I think just we just stopped and looked at him like for who he is for the first time. Well, not for, you know, for that session. And Inga sort of talked to me about stuff, you know, about how babies communicate from a really early age and how you can get to know them from a really early age. And we, it just really helped develop that bond that we'd had almost, and it's sort of almost lost. And it really just put me into a different space as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the kind of I should mention the kind of technical name for these sessions that Faith had is nice and long, but it's the Neonatal Behavioural Assessment Scale. So we call it the MBAS for short. And the EMBO as well that we've been talking about this week, that does similar things. So it's just the chance to observe the baby together. And the wonderful thing is that it's kind of strength based. So it's drawing out all the things the baby can do, and looking at all the behaviours. Obviously everything that a baby is doing has meaning, even the most subtle things. So it's just really fascinating. And the other wonderful thing about the MBAS as well is the way that it draws out kind of the individuality of the baby. And Faith, I don't know if you can remember, was there anything kind of about Xavier's little kind of personality that came out?
Absolutely. I mean, what we discovered is that if Xavier doesn't like something, he will find a way. This was with the turning over. He will find a way to get out of it, and that's still the
Yeah.
There's no just give it a try. It's like I will, and I'll figure it out for myself. And so therefore we went on to say, that obviously he's very determined, and he straight away that he had a very strong character. And a strong personality, and also I think we just knew he was going to be funny because he laughed a lot and smiled a lot and was very happy. And all those things that we started from that very small seed of getting to know him. Then I'd look at him, for example, I used to try and make him crawl. I mean, obviously because of the diagnosis, I did an early intervention with him, so we try and do a lot of physical stuff to try and make sure that he was doing okay physically. And so I put him on a mat because I wanted him to start crawling, and then I put his toys at the other side of the mat, and what he'd do is he'd just pull the mat so the toys came to him.
Wow.
I'd be like, how did you figure that out? And I think that's, this is the thing, like with the turning over, it all fitted into this been watching already, who if he didn't want to do something, he'd find a way out of it.
Yeah. I think that's just so wonderful though, like that, as you've said before, that the Down syndrome diagnosis doesn't define him, and he aside from that, he has his own personality, and he's so fun, and you could see that right kind of from the start.
And I think the danger from the way that we were treated, I don't know if it's different now, but for example the way we were treated at the hospital, and I had lots of people telling me, I had one lady, and again this is why Inga became so important. One of the health visitors said to me, oh well, there's a little girl like Xavier at Frewington School, she sits in the corner and eats paint, but that's okay. How could you tell me that that's okay? Doesn't mean you're allowed to eat paint, and things like that. And they tell me things that would happen. Oh, he's gonna overeat. I remember the consultant telling me this really long story about how these group of children with Down syndrome all went off on a treat trip for pizza and blah 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 blah, and they really enjoyed the pizza. And I'm saying, so you're telling me that he's gonna like pizza? I mean, point of your story. And there were all these things coming at me, when I've got this tiny baby, he would and wouldn't do, and blah. And so Inga was having that session saying, no, look at him, this is him, you don't need to compare to other people, you don't need to listen to this nonsense about eating paint. I mean, he might eat paint at some point, actually I don't think he does, but it's seeing him and not seeing this, because it would have been so easy for him suddenly just to become a child with Down syndrome rather than Xavier Bleasdale, which is who he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I would just love to hear a bit about him now. You said he's 12 now. What kind of things does he like?
Well, he loves swimming. He likes football, but not as a team sport, as a solo activity.
Yeah.
And horse riding. Really likes horse riding. And he technology. He's addicted to the iPad.
Oh.
But he loves school and he loves learning, and that's really great, because that's obviously a big thing you worry about, is that they're going to enjoy. He's social. He doesn't like other children very much, or he tolerates them, but he's not, he's not a one with friends. Doesn't like parties. I don't know where he gets that from, because I'm the complete opposite. But again, he's a really charming boy, and he's got this great sense of humor. And if he makes people laugh, then he loves that. So he will keep doing it, even if he's doing what he shouldn't do. So in a nutshell, and he still, if he doesn't like something, you got no chance of getting him to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing to hear. And you, I believe, have kind of written a book about this kind of journey. Could you share a bit about your book?
Yeah, I should have a copy somewhere. I'll find it in a minute. I did write it when he was 1. So if I was probably going to write it today, it would probably be, it would probably be quite different. I was quite angry as well at the time, because people were telling me what I should and shouldn't be doing. I was very, very judged by people who I thought of as friends, that were saying, well, you're not taking it seriously enough, and blah, 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 and it was a time. So I wrote a book that, basically a lot of what I've been saying today about how I was not going to let that define either him or me, because the danger when you're a parent is that you can become defined by your child as well. So, you've got to fight for your child, but you've also got to fight for yourself. So I wrote a book called Happily Ever After, about, how we were going to live our lives. And I pretty much probably stuck to it, because I've never really veered off that track with him, and I've lost friends and people over it. But the most important thing is that I know instinctively as a mum that I've always done the best for my child. And I think that's all any parent ever wants,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's amazing. And that book is available to buy, is it?
It's on Amazon.
Yeah. I've kind of read, I think, some of the reviews about it, and everyone was just so kind of blown away and thought it was such an amazing story. So
I'm not sure it is. I mean, it does. When I look at it now, sometimes I think, oh, did that really happen to me? Yes, it still is happening to us, but so it's always when life throws the unexpected at you, you've got to, you learn so much. I learned so much about myself in the process, as well as learning about my son. I've learned an awful lot about myself, the good and the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think, just to start kind of finishing off, I guess, with it being Baby Communication Week, I think I wondered if you could share your kind of feelings about why it's important for parents to kind of get to know their baby's communication and abilities. And this is sort of for any parents, but
absolutely for any parent. I mean, this is the thing. It wouldn't have occurred to me before, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me and my child, because you can get to know your babies from the day that they're born. You can look at them and you can see things, like I said, things I saw in Xavier through having that session with Inga, I have still stuck. He's changed obviously a bit and he's evolved, but there are bits of his character that I've got to know then, and it really parent to a child. And sometimes obviously I know that bonding it can be an issue with mothers and newborn babies, and that's one way where I think it would be really, really important. But also, just generally, it's just a lovely way to get to know your child and look at them not just as a baby who might get interesting when they get to 2 or 3 and start talking and doing stuff, but actually as this human being that's already got their personality and all the rest of it. And I wouldn't have known that without this. I wouldn't have even thought about it without this course. And I think I really wish it was so much, I wish every new parent got to do this, to be honest, because I think it changed our lives for the better, and always going to be incredibly grateful for it. And actually I have written about that in the book, so
that's amazing. And we want that as well, that every parent would be able to kind of have a practitioner, a health visitor, someone who's kind of alongside them to share their baby with them. It's a really powerful thing, and it actually sort of leads really nicely on to tomorrow, because we're going to be sharing about that, and how there's different kind of areas around the country that are starting to make this a kind of part of care for all families, which is really amazing. So
just quickly, just a thought, because obviously I'm a single parent, so it doesn't, but I think really important for fathers as well, because sometimes like doing the breastfeeding and it's the mothers who's on maternity leave and doing all that, it's really important for them to get to know their child. I think it can make that bond happen so much more quickly than otherwise do.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think sometimes kind of dads can be seen just as a support for the mum, and you know, that is a really important job, but actually
getting that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And once they kind of understand that, like, my baby's always communicating with me, and they kind of grow in that confidence that, like, oh, I know what he or she's saying, and I know what that means, and so I can do something about it. And so
yeah, I just, again, that's with Xavier. I could identify after this. I could identify when he was, when he was hungry, when he was tired. I could identify things that otherwise you just don't always know how to identify.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Faith.
That's
we haven't had any questions come through, but I think everyone's probably been so engrossed in hearing about your story. But yeah, thank you. And we are continuing on tomorrow, and as I said, we're going to look at kind of sharing babies' communication as part of kind of care services, and we are going to be hearing from a lady in Manchester who kind of heads up their health visiting service, and has brought the EMBO to all the health visitors, and it's done with all the families across Manchester, which is really amazing. So that is going to be on our Instagram page at 1 p.m. tomorrow, so do join us for that. So thank you again, Faith. We hope you have a lovely day, and thank you so much again for sharing.
That's my pleasure.
Oh, right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.